I've always wanted to visit Standen, which is an arts and crafts property owned by the National Trust in East Sussex. I finally got a chance in February and I'd like to show you what I saw. Standen was built in 1892 as a country retreat for the Beale family, James and Margaret Beale, and their 7 children. The house was designed by architect Philip Webb, who became great friends with the Beale family over the course of his employment there. It was important to Webb to use local materials, and in fact most of the house is built with sandstone used from the site itself. Alongside the sandstone he used lots of different colours of bricks. Oak was used in the building too, to complement the farm buildings that were already in situ. The Beales wanted the house to be cheerful and homely, not at all ostentatious, and for me the approach to the building really demonstrates this. An original farmhouse is actually what you're faced with first. The entrance to the main house is actually sort of tucked away. You go past the servants' entrance before you actually get to the main entrance. So the front door is really a back door, albeit a rather grand one. When you go into the property, you walk into the hall and straight away you get a taste of what's ahead of you. Margaret Beale chose the furnishings with help from her daughter Maggie, and really throughout the property it's Morris & Co. carpets, curtains, wallpaper and furniture. A bay window was added later because the room was considered to be dark, and now that houses a really large grand piano. From the hall you move into the billiards room, which is a room that apparently was used by men, women and children, which was quite unusual for the time. The curtains are Morris & Co.'s Compton design, and the greens really pick up the green of the billiards table. Apparently the rocking horse was a reward for 3-year-old Amy Beale when she learnt her alphabet. My favourite bit of this room was actually added later. It's got a lovely round window and Morris & Co. pomegranate wallpaper. You can go through to see the other side of that round window in the conservatory. This light and airy room was kept deliberately simple. Webb said that he didn't want anything to disagree with the flowers that were grown in there. The drawing room is a really excellent, elegant room, but comfortable looking too. I really like the way it's partitioned off with sections of fabric. The Morris & Co. wallpaper combines grapes and vines with sunflowers, and some of the light fittings have a sunflower theme. There's lots of well-known, familiar patterns in here, but there's also some cushions, which I understand were designed and made by Maggie Beale, one of the daughters. It's a really nice touch by the National Trust that they've got an embroidery hoop on display here with a design in the making. In the hallway you walk past 2 large portraits, one of James Beale and one of Margaret Beale. I love the fact that Margaret Beale is actually knitting in the portrait. You really get a sense of her in this house. She was obviously a very creative person. The dining room at Standen is a really fine room. It's got beautiful panelling in a dark green colour. Against that, blue and white china on every ledge. Heavy fabric curtains in the peacock and dragon Morris & Co. design are in this room, and apparently they're so heavy, these big wool curtains, that they have to get a ladder to draw them across. When you leave the dining room and step out into the corridor, you're met with this expanse of William Morris's trellis wallpaper. Not only is this interesting because it's William Morris's first design, but the birds that are featured were drawn by Philip Webb, the architect, based on birds he'd seen at Morris's Red House. My favourite room in the downstairs of Standen was definitely the morning room. It's a really light, sun-filled room, and women used to spend their time in here before lunch. There's an armchair in Morris & Co.'s Golden Lily design, which was the same pattern used on my own family sofa when I was a child. There's printed wall hangings in Morris & Co.'s Daffodil design. These make the room feel really special. I love that the curtains match the wall hangings and the whole room feels encased in pattern. There's a much more masculine feeling to be found in the study, which is a small room but smart and pared back. It's here I noticed the very ornate finger plate on the doors. These are throughout the main part of the house. They get a little bit simpler in the servants' quarters, but they're still fine all the same. The wallpaper in the study is in Morris & Co.'s poppy design from the original blocks. As you go up the stairs, there looks to be a large painting, but when you look really closely, it's actually a drawing almost in pencil crayon. These were known as cartoons, and this one's by Ford Madox Brown. Cartoon is a funny way to describe it, but it's a study for another painting. Then onto the top landing is a really beautiful Morris & Co tapestry of St Agnes. This was based on a design by Edward Burne-Jones, but I believe the fruit tree in the background was designed by J.H. Durrell from Morris & Co. I love the detail in this tapestry and got particularly interested in the flowers round St Agnes's feet. The wallpaper in the hallway and the landing is actually bachelor's buttons, and I believe I read somewhere that it's the original paper hangings. They're varnished, so they've been protected and they've lasted a long time. From here you go into what I think is called the Larkspur bedroom, which was hands down my favourite room in the upstairs of the house. I would happily move in here, and not just because it had one of the first ever built-in wardrobes with integrated looking glass, designed specifically by Webb for, I think, one of the Beale daughters. I'd move in because of the lovely colours and the light in this room. The patterns are really subtle, but work really harmoniously together. Next to the bedroom is a dressing room with a washstand and a wardrobe and suitcases. I really loved the Fair Isle jumper that's just draped over the back of a chair. The colours really picked out the oranges in the Larkspur. There was another dressing room, or a sort of study, off a room further down the corridor, which I think was called the North Bedroom, used by daughter Maggie Beale in the 1920s. I'm not sure of the name of the wallpaper in here because it's not daisy and it's not poppy, but it features those flowers. As with every room in Standen, the carpet had as much pattern going on as the walls. There was a bathroom just off Maggie's bedroom. I really like the detail of what's been left in the room, small soap and a couple of rubber ducks. Maggie Beale was an artist and stayed in the house for a long time. Latterly, she actually had the Westbourne room as her studio. She taught nieces and nephews to paint in there, and there was a sort of dressing up box and lots of different things to suggest there was a lot of life in this room. I really like looking at the detail of the objects people choose to surround themselves with, especially in a workspace. The final room I saw upstairs was called the Croxley room. It was a very sumptuous feeling room. The curtains were kept closed, so it was a little bit dark, but you could still just see that it was layered with pattern and texture everywhere you looked. The bedspread was an acanthus pattern. The wallpaper was my favourite marigold design by Morris & Co. The bedroom suite was made by Liberty in an ash wood, and May Morris designed embroideries were on display as a fire screen with the fantastic message, "Tomorrow is a new day." I like the idea that that was maybe the last thing somebody saw as they went to bed at the end of a tricky day. Hope for tomorrow. One of the things I particularly noticed at Standen was that the pattern didn't just stay in the fancy areas of the house. It spread right through the servants' quarters. On the back staircase, the walls are papered in Morris & Co.'s mallow design, which I really like in this very subtle colourway. You move through to an entire corridor papered in Morris & Co.'s Leicester design. Right up against this, in another back room, is Morris & Co.'s Daisy design, which is really nicely contrasted with green paintwork round the door. The room set up as the servants' dining room had plain walls, but two very comfortable armchairs and a rug at the far end of the room. You got the impression that this space was homely, or a home away from home for the staff that worked here. The kitchen was quite simple and plain, but it had a really nice feeling to it, and there was still some very pretty china on display on the dresser. I like the way this room was set up with lots of props to make it feel like it was a kitchen still in use. Just outside the conservatory, there's a small porch lined with Delft tiles, really playful, sweet designs, and a little external staircase that goes up to a room that Webb designed specifically for the children. This playroom is called the Little Room, and when I visited it was actually so full of children visiting it that I couldn't really get in to take photographs. If you look through the pages of my sketchbook that filled up after my trip to Standen, it would be easy to think that I'd walked around extensive gardens because there were so many flowers appearing on the page. But in fact, the interiors alone were such a huge source of inspiration for me. Just taking single flowers and celebrating them in a pattern is one of the things that William Morris did best, and it's something that I do in my work too. I couldn't resist drawing a daffodil, not only because they're out this time of year, but because I'd seen them in the drawing room and also in the morning room in the Morris & Co designs. You can see Lego in this shot because 2 of my children caught COVID this week, so homeschooling and lino cutting combined once again. I found myself drawing and carving a vine, which is no surprise because that features in so many designs by Morris & Co, and also a tulip, a kind of playful dancing tulip shape, which I printed in really bright colours. I didn't plan any of these designs, they just sort of came about. I suppose I quite like just drawing something from my imagination, shapes that remind me of a particular flower, and seeing what it turns into. My favourite design is really detailed. It's almost like an abundant meadow. This is actually how I feel about Standen itself. There's so much to see.